is on the way. I'm not gonna announce.
We are unmuted.
All right, awesome. Well, good evening, I guess. This is the Children's Services Council, Leon Council Governing Council meeting for today, Thursday, January 15th. It is now 4:08 p.m. and Happy New Year, everyone. With that, there are opportunities for public comment. We just ask that you please complete a public comment card. And we will do that every time anytime there's a prior council vote, we will allow for public comment. With that, council members, please remember, if you would like to add a comment or make a comment, please use your cards, stand them up upright, and we will recognize you. So with that, we will go ahead and get started with our roll call. If we could, Ms. McPhail.
Ms. Vanderlinden? Here. Ms. Richards? Here. Mr. O'Brien?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Judge Hobbs? Superintendent Hannah? Commissioner Cummings? Treasurer Mitchell?
Here.
Vice Chair Watts?
Here.
Chair Jones? You have a quorum.
Awesome, thank you. So we will jump right in.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move the agenda, please.
All right, well, thank you very much. We have a motion by Mr. Mitchell.
A second.
A second by member O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we will move on to the next thing, which is general public comment. Do we have any public comment?
There is no public comment, Mr. Chair.
No public comment. Thank you very much. So with that, we will now move on to the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I will move the consent agenda.
All right, we have a motion for the consent agenda. Any second?
Second.
All right, and Councilmember Johnson, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? All right, so moved. So with that, we will now move on to our general counsel update with Mr. Rowe.
And there are none.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, moving right along. So next we will have our committee reports update. I'm very excited to have an opportunity to discuss this next section, which is around our strategic planning ad hoc work group. If you will, I believe that is on page 21 in your packets. So with that, the ad hoc committee, which I felt like was very productive sessions that we held. I do want to thank the members that participated, Superintendent Hannah, Commissioner Cummings, Councilmember Johnson, Richards. And so I think what we'll do now is take an opportunity to just do a high level overview, if you will, of our process in coming up with these goals. But do know that members have an opportunity to digest these proposed SMART goals in depth, and then there'll be a further discussion. You can send those things ahead of time to the staff if you have any questions as you're reviewing those. It will come up again in March or April for final discussion, and I think it will require a vote from the actual council. So just know that today is an overview, tell you how we came up with these things. Will be an opportunity for questions, but you will be able to digest and send any feedback in time before you vote on that. So with that, I think Holly was going. Oh, Mr. Mitchell.
And I can wait until we get into it. The first item, the kindergarten readiness.
Sure.
And I don't know if you know this, or Holly, you know this. There was some discussion over the last year, and I know that we've got this baseline of August of 2025 that was proposed. Seems like a good goal to go after, but there was some question as to whose number was right in terms of school readiness. And I'm just been trying to figure out what is that baseline
Sure.
number?
I think I know the answer to it, just based on our discussion. So know that, and we'll talk about this. We absolutely went back to the drawing board and made sure that, the staff met with Leon County Schools.
Right.
So that it wasn't just, I use the phrase willy-nilly. So this was in line with making sure that it matched up with what Leon County Schools, measurements were to measure kindergarten readiness, making sure that we didn't,
Yeah.
undersell. Go ahead, yeah, sure.
Okay, so if I'm understanding the question, you want to know what we're using as baseline. So baseline is determined by the Department of Education for the year that, and I think we proposed using 2025. So we're looking at what the Department of Education is saying is the kindergarten readiness rate for Leon County
Okay.
with the, using 2025.
So Leon County total or by zip code?
Well, we'd be looking at Leon County in totality, but then we have the ability to look at zip code. This goal wants to specifically look at Title I elementary schools because that's where the majority of our work would go. But we have to start with the overall rate for all of the schools that they put in that measurement, and then we can drill down.
So again, I want to make sure that, and see, you're kind of getting to I'm not concerned. I mean, I think this is a laudable goal, but if suddenly the Department of Education changes, where the goalpost is in terms of kindergarten readiness, and it's like, well, we're not closer to our goal of getting more kids ready, but we are in a better position. I mean, I see the goal is by 5 percentage points. Well, if it's 5 percentage points compared to August 2025 of the school readiness score at that time,
Yeah.
then I think it's great, but I know that DOE is continuing to sort of raise the bar.
These are dynamic. And so as the changes come from DOE, then we will go back and adjust the goal. So for example, one of the discussions I guess we can just go ahead and jump in. One of the discussion points I am hot. I don't know about anybody else, and I'm sure it's the same, but I'm not taking it off. One of the things we discussed was whether DOE, so when DOE does their measurement, it's at the beginning of the year. Well, the discussion was, you really don't know what the readiness is, or you can't really measure it until you get into the first part of the grading period. But we want to be congruent with what DOE is measuring. If at some point during this 5-year process, things change with DOE as far as what they're using as a measurement goal, what the goalpost is, if you will, then we have the ability to come back to the council to say, now that this goalpost is moved, do we want to augment the goal as well? But I think the most important thing is that we're not using the number from 22, these assessment. We're using the number provided by DOE from baseline 2025, and that was in consultation with superintendent.
So let's say that school readiness was defined by a score of 70 or better on a test. And that's kindergarten readiness, right? And so we have 40% or 38% of our kids are ready for kindergarten in Leon County. Okay? And 31%, I'm making these numbers up, but let's just say that these are accurate. 31% in the Title I schools, right? So we want to go from 31 to 36. My fear is that 70 in August of 2025 is going to jump to a 74 by August of 2030. And so that's what I mean by DOE. I don't think it's a bad thing that they sort of raised the bar, that they changed the goalpost. But I want to make sure that our goal of trying to get kids like to move the needle, we actually see the moving of the needle based on 2025 numbers.
Yeah, I don't think they're,
But DOE will change their numbers. That's my point, is that what qualifies as kindergarten readiness in 2030 is gonna look different than what qualifies as kindergarten readiness in 2025.
so this council, if we decide that 2025 is the number that we're going to use, because to your point, if we keep moving what the base is, we're never going to accomplish the goal.
Right.
So we have the ability to decide what our baseline is, so that we are showing consistently, we are measuring off 2025. And we are measuring that 5 points off of 2025. Now, as DOE moves, of course, we'll take that into consideration. But if we keep saying 5% from whatever the new number is that DOE is saying, then we're gonna constantly be in a circle. So right now, what DOE is saying is that a performance of 707 or better is
Okay, that's what
considered,
that number
is
means.
considered ready for kindergarten.
Okay,
What we discussed is that I don't wanna say the real number. Real measurement. Because this 707 is measured in the first 30 days. Right, so it's measured in the first 30 days. So the way to hit this measurement is to get before they get into kindergarten, which we've talked about. So it's really about getting them before they get to kindergarten. Well, in your Title I schools, your number of kids that are at 707 is gonna be much lower because those kids have no exposure. So that's why we're focusing on the before they hit kindergarten, so that their propensity for hitting 707 at PM1 is going to be higher. That being said, Brooke Bruner is here, that being said, when we're really looking at movement in kindergarten, we're really looking at 788 by the time you get to, is it PM3? Brooke, by the time you get to PM3. The problem is though, DOE measures 30 days in. So you've got to be congruent with that measure.
yeah, I definitely think that's right.
Now, to your point, DOE could come back in the middle of this, and they will, and say, this is hypothetical. They could say, well, we now want it to be 710. So it would all be calculated differently from that year. And then we would need to change our goal for a baseline of 710.
Yeah, but I wanna make sure that. I wanna
When
make sure
looking
that
at-
we're at 707. Like,
Right now, we're at 707.
right, but 5 years from now, our goal is to increase the number of kids who are kindergarten ready as defined in August 2025 by 5%.
Right,
That's
our goal.
right, so I just don't wanna set us up for failure when I think we're going to achieve the goal. But if we're in 2030, looking at how many kids are at now a score of 720 instead of 707, well, then it won't look right.
So can I propose?
Absolutely.
And I see we have some other cards raised. So this is exactly what, we appreciate the discussion, is what we want. I'm hoping that the staff is writing that down, right? So like for about a point, what will that look like? I don't know that we necessarily want to, okay, DOE changes, in 5 years, and then we're changing that. What does that look like for a smart home? Does that make sense? Like, is that something that we even make sense? So we may want to write that down, do some research. I don't know how, Leon County did have present to us, explain to us PO1, which I had never heard of in all different categories. But maybe they have a formula as to if it changes, how you guys actually incorporate or measure those things. Anyway, we'll have that down. That's a valid point. Because then we need to make a decision. Do we want to be changing our goals each time DOE, or is there some other mechanism? But I'm gonna recognize, I don't know who was first.
Okay. So here's my concern with this. I don't. If we're constantly going off of someone who's constantly changing, then there's really no baseline. And that makes it difficult, but also too, how do we know that our programs are actually impacting?
You'll know that by the measurement. So as we are monitoring the programs and looking at the outcomes, that's how we will know if the needle is moving. So it could mean that a program we're funding does well the first year, like we can see
Right.
where it's moving. Then by the second year, something is looking off. So that's where our team goes in and in concert with UPHS and our evaluators, which we'll get into that discussion a little later, to say, what is it that's going on that needs to be treated? So
Right.
that's part of the monitoring.
Okay, so, but my thing is like, if I have a child that is in one of these programs, who's to say they're not also in outside individual counseling, or they're doing something else on their own? How do we know it's our program that is making the change and not all the programs, or just because they have a really good teacher that understands in that year, or like, is there any are we comparing, okay, these kids we know are in this, and then these kids are not, like, is there anything that?
So it can get a little convoluted, because what we don't want to do is create a control group. Because when you create a control, you're saying these kids won't get it and these kids will get it. When we're focusing in the Title I schools, what we know is that most of those children don't have anything because of the fact that it's a Title I school, and we are looking at specific referrals from teachers, from parents, from the administration for inclusion in programs. There will be several programs that happen in the school. So we will be looking at the kids involved in our program, and through, it's not a screening process, but through the application process, the provider will say, is your child involved in anything else? If they're involved in anything else, can you get your permission to get that information? So it's not going to be exact. It's never going to be exact, because we may not know everything that a child is experiencing. To your point, the child is in our program, but then the parent has made a deal with the grandparent that picks them up, that they're going to go over everything that child does. Right? So that's not necessarily another program, but it's another infusion that works with that child. Well, parent engagement and family engagement is a part of it. And yes, that child may get better, but that's a piece that may or may not know. We can only go off of what we're measuring and the information that we have. At some point, we're not going to be able to alter everything, but we will have an evaluation process and an outcome monitoring process that can tell us, I think in research they call it plus or minus, is that what they say, to a plus or minus standard deviation, if our program is working. And that is why the ad hoc committee wanted to specifically focus in Title I schools, because we know that resources in Title I schools affect the kindergarten readiness of those students in the school, or areas surrounding those Title I schools.
But with kindergarten, kindergarten readiness, if we're talking about like pre-K, right? That is a school, what is it, school choice, right? There's not, just because I live in a Title I school does not mean I'm not going to Fox if I can get in there. So I think that's also.
So if I may say, we can always find caveats. At some point, we have to decide this is what we are going to focus on, and we're going to do our best to isolate it and ensure that participants in this program need the program. School choice is definitely out there, and at the last Early Learning Leon meeting, Brooke went over the criteria that they're using for people to choose the schools. You get zip code information, it's for sure. I don't know how to say this other than to say it. I don't know how many people choose for their child to come from the north side of the continent. but you might have.
Right, which is.
Right, but you could have a few that are in Pine View and choose to go to a North Side spread. That wouldn't be a child that we capture.
Right.
You would capture that child, and that child counts in Hawks Rise numbers, not Pine View's numbers.
Right.
So we can only capture the children who are enrolled in that school. We can't worry about children who are in that district, but because of school choice are going to another.
Yeah, and I guess that's my thing is that this is kindergarten readiness and we are Leon County. I get we're focusing on Title I, but there are Title I children that are going to different schools and then going back to Title I. And there are more programs offered in the schools at, let's say, Title I, maybe compared to, I don't know, Hawks Rise or Gilchrist or whatever. And I guess that is what is throwing me is like,
Why are we isolating Title I?
I get Title I. I'm just saying, how are we, where is that something we can do and say, okay, we have Title I schools and can we compare it to the kids in the other schools that are, I just want to make sure our programs are effective because there are some programs in here like this, what is it, the cognitive behavioral resilience program, rebound and recovery. Has anyone ever done counseling on 4-year-olds? The cognitive behavioral therapy on 4-year-olds?
Unless they're interested in accounting.
Right, like that's the thing is that, there's just some things that I'm like, I don't know how we're going to account for that, like, I just.
So if I may, council member, this is an iterative process. We are just starting year 5. And so part of this is, so if I understand what you're saying, so let me go back. There are, quote, Title I children who classify as Title I at every school in the district. We know that there are concentrations of Title I students at schools that are specifically classified as Title I.
Mhm.
So while we want to be able to help every child who's classified as a Title I student, the reality is we are not scaled, nor do we have the funding to identify every Title I child in the entire county. So we have to go for where the majority of those children are. And we know that the majority of them are in schools that are classified as Title I schools. So if we focus our resources on those schools, it goes to when the tide rises, all the ships rise. So if we are able to impact kindergarten readiness in a Title I school, then we know that overall our kindergarten readiness will go up. Now, we want to get to a point where we could literally identify all Title I students beforehand and impact them. So irrespective of which school they attend, their performance is going to be high. Yes, we just aren't at a point where we have that type of research yet. So we have to start micro before we can go back. So that's how, you can tell me if I'm.
Go ahead.
That's how the committee kind of came up with, well, if we focus in Title I schools, then we know that we're impacting a population that absolutely needs these services. I do want to go back to the baseline though, because as a council, you have the ability to determine what your starting year is. And everything that we do will be from that starting year. If DOE decides next year, they're gonna change the base kindergarten readiness score to 710, it doesn't negate any work that we did in the previous year. That's where we have asterisks and caveats to show that during this year, the number was this and we saw this move. But we will continue to work to get those kids to whatever the minimum DEO says is there. So this is iterative and it is dynamic. But we should be able to show with our measurements, with our outcomes, with our monitorings, that as of the year we adopt this goal, we can see a 5% move from the baseline at that time.
Appreciate that. Thank you for your comments. You know, again, and Holly, I think is taking notes. So even to that point, even if we felt like 707 was a step we wanted to go higher, than that, again, there's some options you all could bring back. If we want to go ahead and say we wanted at 710 or, whatever, just say, you're gonna write that down and bring back what makes sense. Councilmember Richards.
I'm gonna go back a little bit to our conversation about baselines. Why can't we just take August 2025 out and have baseline?
Because then the baseline is gonna move every year. We
I know,
have to
but-
determine where our starting point is, and I think that's what
Yeah, that,
Councilmember Mitchell was saying. If it changed, so if we start at 2025 and it's 707, then after this session 26, they decide in the fall of 27, the baseline goes up to 710. So literally, if we go with that, we've negated any work that happened during the school year of 26, 27. And we should not do that. What we should do is say for that year, at least in my professional opinion, what we should do is say for that year, we started at this baseline and this is where we are, and we made this much progress. I'm just afraid if we just say from baseline and not have a year, it's not a true goal. Because it has to be measurable and it has to be specific. So if we don't give ourselves a starting point, we're never gonna achieve it.
Does anyone know, sorry.
Go ahead.
Has anyone, like, what the baseline just is without DOEs and like, is there, I don't know if you can answer this, not a teacher, but like, what the baseline?
I would be happy to pull up, we have it by school, they publish it every quarter, and so like we have that. The Leon County School District has one that they report, and then we look at every school because we have 2 schools operating here that are not part of Leon County Schools District. So I'd be happy to pull that up and also send it to you.
So Leon County has a baseline. They say this is
They have
what their
their,
readiness is. Okay.
they have their kindergarten readiness.
Okay, so
Yes.
why don't we just follow what theirs is? Do 5 points over what theirs is?
That's what we would
That,
do.
okay, so, but does y'all, there's maybe, does your non-enforcement over here with DOE?
They're measured, yeah,
Is that-
they're measured by this 707. Right now, all schools in the state of Florida, their kindergarten readiness rate is PM1 at 707.
Okay.
so all I wanted was fun. I love this discussion, but it is 5 years from now
Yeah.
to compare it to PM1 707. That was my
Because
not,
our baseline
Right.
is gonna be based
That-
off 2025.
right, that's the baseline, that's the score. And I don't know how frequently that score changes. But
They report it every quarter, I think.
So you're not
But it's
advocating,
PM
we're
one.
not advocating if they change it, that then we follow. We just saying if we adopt this one, we need to stick to.
we're
that
saying
we went.
compare apples to apples, that 5 years from now, we've moved the needle at the overused phrase of, are we
Our
moving?
starting,
Right, and our starting point is 707.
and that determines our success. Now, as we get into 2029, see, hopefully, we will have moved 5 points before 2029. So as we start evaluating again, we would look at what the baseline is at that time and then adopt up there. But I know that if we don't choose a starting point, if we keep that dynamic, we're never gonna hit. There's never any accomplishment. And so, as with other CSCs, you choose the baseline and that's the one you stick with.
Councilman Richards, I know that you were done.
Sorry.
I mean, I'm comfortable with skulls and the group that came up with it, but I was trying to understand where we were all going with this. This is concrete data, and this is what the school system uses, and I have firsthand experience with the concrete data, and I feel confident that this is gonna be a great way to measure.
Councilmember Johnson.
Heard of Rocky. So maybe Ms. Bruner can help answer this a little better. So when did can she come up? Is that right?
Sure.
So when did we move to 707? Last year? 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. And previously, prior to that, it was what, 680 something?
Yes.
686 or something. And how often traditionally do they move it? And is it a different assessment?
Right, so the
Yes, historical.
history of it, so we were utilizing a different assessment prior to the 686. And so that was one change. And then 2 years later, 3 years later, we moved the bar up. And so, and that's natural with any type of assessment. Once we do better, then we increase the bar, right? And so typically we are noticed before that's gonna happen. And then we can work towards that. But I mean, it's not gonna be from year to year. Typically, you would see 2 or 3 years, and then we may have an increase in what the goal is.
And so the other thing that we brought up and that we have to address, that we are going to address internally is the fidelity by which teachers are administering this assessment. Because they don't want necessarily kids to knock the first one out of the park. Because at the end of the year, they aren't going to show a whole lot of growth. So, you know, we want to try to find a way where these kids, maybe for the first time, are on a computer. They don't have, I mean, these are 5-year-olds. So we got to figure out a way to ensure that we're getting accurate data, that if little Paul entering kindergarten, that we're setting him up to be as successful as possible on that first administration, as opposed to, all right, here's a computer, little Paul, figure out how to turn it on. Good luck. 30 minutes later, time. Paul's like, it'd be 3D questions. Right. I know my alphabet. I can count to 100. Right. So, because then at the end of the year, if we have kids knocking it out of the park in August, they get to the end of the year, you won't show as much gain. So, we have to make sure and have conversations that we're getting the best we can out of those kids at that moment in time, because we're using this to reflect really what was done from birth to 5.
Go ahead, Councilmember Johnson.
I had a couple of points just for the benefit of those that weren't on the whatever we were ad hoc committee. So, now, yeah, I think we all were, except for Austin, maybe. What we're reporting now on is, if you even look at the report that was sent agenda, was we're reporting out to the public, we're reporting out to the taxpayers, dollar investments that we're making in some aspects of units served, whatever that unit is, because we haven't had the data collection tools to be able to be more sophisticated in that. And all we can tell you is we're spending your money in areas that make sense relative to the theory of change that we've established as a council. And we know how many people have, or whatever that measurement metric is, family members, deaggregated families who return for services, et cetera. So, I like the way that we positioned this, in that it was very challenging to come up with a set of SMART goals on this for a variety of reasons, some of which you're bringing up right now. My key point that I want to make sure that we get some group think around is, I don't want to get, the reality is that any goal that we set, for example, like kindergarten readiness, you can't say there's a 1-to-1 correlation with a dollar that the Children's Services Council is going to invest and that movement of that, because there are so many other, as we're saying, there are other community partners that are involved in providing the services that are vital for that child to be kindergarten ready. So I think we have to be careful in the way that we've set SMART goals, but the CSC or this council should not be saying, in my opinion, that it was that dollar we put into that one program in that area that made that whole move. It's a partnership with the community partners that are in that area. We know on a research basis, not our research, but independent research, what those critical drivers are, key contributors are for a child to be kindergarten ready. And we're making sure that the community partners are in there. And if there are gaps, then we can augment but not supplant what they should be doing in those areas, if that makes sense.
Very well said. Councilmember Johnson, go ahead, Ms. Richards.
2 points. So I think that the continued best way for us to evaluate individual programs is going to be to look at individual programs and their data specifically, and then decide whether it's in or not. The second point, going off of Councilmember Johnson, is I think I discussed this, or we discussed this, or somebody had discussed this at some point, a map of zip code and by zip code and programs that are in those areas. So if you're looking at Sable Palm Elementary and you're seeing a overlay of services by the CSC, you're also seeing that Sable Palm is a community partnership school, which probably impacts that significantly more than probably any other service in that community. So I think that is really crucial as we start looking at the success and these goals that we have, like, not a live map, that's not something we can undertake, but a map that overlays, shows all of the different services, and not all of them, but just in general, a generalized point of in this zip code, these services existed or exist, and they're coming from this funding source or that funding source, et cetera.
Yeah, yes, so yes. And then the last thing I'll say is, one of the things that our statewide organization, FACT, is working toward is how do we calculate ROI? That is something that all of our councils are struggling to show the community, that for every dollar of the CSC, this is the outcome. And it's because each of us do things a little bit differently, and because just of what you described, the layering of services in particular areas. And when you are an organization that is coming in trying to fill a gap, might be just the thing that takes all the other services over the hump, and now everybody's, it's the way of them. So.
Oh, go ahead.
But this is where, honestly, we have great resources in this town. I mean, when you talk about that, how can we show an ROI? Truth of the matter is, when you're talking about dealing with 0 to 5-year-old kids, you're not going to get a return for a long time. But from a sociological standpoint, there are studies that show that if a child is kindergarten ready, if they can do this by this point, their chances of actually getting a high school degree, a whatever, you can demonstrate that those percentages go up. And as those percentages go up, then those people, you have a percentage of people who enter the workforce at a different rate. I think there's a projection opportunity, and that's where you tag into the research side of this, the social sciences piece of FSU, FAMU, whatever else, and you start looking at providing some projections based upon historical experience. But if people are actually looking for, this child's going to end up generating some increased productivity in your marketplace, probably not going to happen.
Right.
That's an unrealistic expectation, but I think there are ways that we can at least project what the value of that's going to be.
Yes.
So, yes, great discussion as well. I do want to add that as you have an opportunity to actually digest the report. So with that being our goal, you will notice on here, to Councilmember Johnson's point and Richard's, everything that you guys are saying, mostly we've had in these discussions in our meetings. Just know that we do have the objectives and strategies of how we're proposing that we actually target some of these SMART goals, how we target the SMART goals. And so that may add more context if you have an opportunity to read that. So it's not us, hey, we're in this Title I school and we raise kindergarten readiness. It is heavily reliant on process mapping of what exists out there. Are there gaps out there? Do we as the council have the opportunity to enhance, right? Meeting our guidelines, what we say we would fund, enhance programs that might have a gap that might lead towards productivity, towards kindergarten readiness. So just know that there is more detail in the reports under these goals. So Go ahead. Absolutely.
No, so, okay, so. Go ahead. One of the reasons, Mr. Chair, that I thought your idea of this, committee was so brilliant, and I stick by that, is just listen to this conversation. I mean, when, Austin, your addition to this council, and I'm, listen, everybody has a different perspective. But if there was ever a conversation I want to be part of, it's this one. And why are we having this conversation as opposed to, should we fund this for 34,000 versus? It is because you created the committee. The only other point that I want to make is that I don't want anyone listening to this or following this discussion to believe that the Children's Services Council is only looking to serve Title I schools, because that is not the case. The voters did not say, please find additional funding opportunities for Title I schools. They said children and families in Leon County, and that's where the dollars go. What we are saying in this goal, and it just happened to be first, but it was the one that I'm globbing onto because I think it matters a lot, is that, sort of to the executive director's point, is that the rising tide does lift all ships. And if we are focusing in on an area of great concern, and that is children who are not ready for kindergarten, by the time they enter kindergarten, where is the highest percentage? It just so happens they're in the Title I schools. So we're focusing there, but it doesn't mean that we're ignoring the rest. And the last point I'll make is all about when we talked about Griffin Heights and a family resource center there. And there was a comment made by one of the folks who showed up at one of the public meetings that, well, we lost out to, Fort Braden, where once again, it's like, wait, the programs that we fund are meant for I don't know whether a kid who's in a summer program goes to Griffin Middle School, or I don't know where they go to school. But the folks in Griffin Heights are being served by our programs. And also kind of to your point, you're never going to be able to track them back to whether it's our program or another program. We just need to raise the awareness. And again, I thank you, Mr. Chair, for this idea, because from your idea comes the best discussion that I remember having in the last 5 years. This is really what the CSC to me is all about. So thank you. And thank you for being here.
Thank you. So if we don't have any other discussion points on the kindergarten readiness, I will let you know moving forward, there will be a trend. So what we started with goal 1 of kindergarten readiness, know that there will be a theme where we attempted to try to follow that age group as it gets older in some of these. So let's just move on to the next one with these youth and success, and know that these titles, you guys, are the things that we actually voted on as a council for our needs assessment theory of change. So these are not willy-nilly. This is what we voted on that we would focus on way back when. So youth and success, we actually came up with 2 goals under youth and success. We were intentional of not trying to do 25 goals. So kindergarten readiness, 1 goal. We felt like that one was large enough for us to try to sink our teeth into. Youth and success, the 2 goals we came up with is increase the percentage of Leon County 3rd graders in Title I schools reading on grade level by 5 percentage points by 2030, using school year 24-25 as the baseline. And I know, so again, it's building on from the last goal. And the other goal under youth and success is increase the percentage of young adults ages 18 to 25 who are employed or enrolled in post-secondary education or training by 10% by 2030. So I will say that we made sure, from great feedback and discussions, that those numbers that are referenced in those SMART goals, that we did have the staff connect with Leon County Schools to make sure that they, made sense, and in line with things that they were tracking already and what data they track. So we'll pause there. Those are the two goals. Again, under each of those goals, you will see our theory of change, the proposed community partners that would likely influence the success of that goal, and then the strategies that we came up with of how we would try to influence and meet those goals. So I start with you, Mr. O'Brien.
Yeah, I believe we all know the answer, but make sure that it's clear to whoever is watching and that we make sure it's clear that when you start talking about post-secondary education and training, that includes trades and other types of programs that enable people who have specific skills.
Correct.
It's not just college or.
And I'm noticing something on here, so it's giving me an idea. I'll just throw it out there, but you'll see under youth and success goal number 2, it references measurement indicator EM3. Maybe it might be valuable if the staff could send to the council members what these different actual mean, and why we felt like it was relevant to actually reference here. So I do see council member, I recognize you. Austin.
Sorry,
Austin.
Yes. How did we get the age for goal 3? Just because I know, yeah, from 18 to 24, why are we starting at 18?
Okay, go ahead.
So we're starting at 18 because we are looking, so if we go back to goal 2, and y'all may have discussed that, which, let me interject. Commissioner Cummings has family in town, and it is just not gonna make it today. So we're gonna be sure to let you guys know that, because she doesn't miss meetings. So I did that. So we looked at goal 2 because we don't have any measurement from kindergarten. There's no measurement until they get to 3rd grade. So when we're talking about increasing the percentage from 18 to 24, it's what we do ahead of time before they turn 18, so that by the time they get 18, we're seeing where they are either doing college, career, or technical. But that's where you measure it. You measure it at age 18, not before. But it doesn't mean that we aren't doing the incremental outcomes before that should lead to the increase at age 18.
Okay.
Let me add, help me, I want to add something to that. Tell me if I'm trying to, I think I remember as well. But when we came up with the 3rd grade, right? So think about this, we start with the kindergarten readiness, right? This is not going to be overnight, right? So we start with the kindergarten readiness, that's hopefully being impactful, our strategies, our objectives, and then it's translating over to, not that we're not, but eventually it's a trickle up effect. Hopefully by 3rd grade, we're seeing some movement. And I think it was the efforts that we do in goal number 2 would eventually transpire in that 18 age range down the line, be able to show possibly.
Right. And as a council, we have the ability, we are congruent with DCF. So DCF services from birth, conception, to age 23 and 364 days. You know that, I'm sorry.
No.
So for us,
No,
it's
yeah.
the same thing, but we would do the measurement at age 18. So that is normally when they are finishing up high school
Right.
and making the decision about which way they want.
So I guess that is my thing is, with the employee part, because of, I mean, I know a handful of kids, people that I've worked with, the teenagers, stuff, they start working at 16. I mean, we do a lot with dependency, get them into, independent living stuff and all of that. So I guess my thing is like, if they're already on that, because a lot of these kids do have jobs to help support their family, I guess they're getting measured in this too as well.
If they are not, we are trying to follow the kids that are involved in our programs. So a 16-year-old out there who is working, if they never touch us,
Yes.
that's not, they will be in this number overall, but we would have an identifier so we can specifically look at the ones who touched our programs in some sort of way.
Okay, so but if they've touched our program, let's say in third grade or something, we have the ability to continue following them. Or if the parent wants them to, or something like it, that's what I'm saying is like, how do we, over these 18 years, follow them to make sure that, I don't say this is the route they're going, but like.
So ideally,
No, I do.
Yeah, like-
ideally, when they start with us. So we are working on a data sharing agreement with Leon County Schools so that we are able to, in a de-identified way, follow kids from the beginning where they get involved with us to the end or at any point across the spectrum.
Yeah.
When they are getting into age 18, of course, it's up to them to decide if they want to, tell us. And so ideally, if they're involved with us, we, as in our programs, have developed that relationship with them, that they stay involved with us. But what we're trying to do is once we identify them, kind of stay with them the whole time. SAMUS does, I think, Holly, you can jump in here on SAMUS and how it identifies participants when they come into our program. So we do have the ability to know if a participant is touching several of our programs. We did not at first, let me reiterate that. The very first funding cycle, we didn't have that ability. Once we got into 23 and SAMUS came on board, we had the ability to identify them no matter which funded program of ours they touch.
So I'll share, thank you, Sika, for the opportunity of just sharing that these goals, we chose broad-based community goals to influence where we want to invest. And the next item on the agenda is how are we going to do it at that individual program level? So they're complementary, but don't confuse this measurement of what we're doing with the specific programs.
Right, I'm not confused.
Okay,
I like this goal. I think we need to hound more into our high school. I mean, because we are trying to get in middle school, right? We're trying to get these children to be active members of the society. So I mean, I can completely get it. I just want to make sure the ones that are not 18, that are maybe 16, that are having to go ahead and work, who are saying like, oh, I can't go to school, college or something, they're also being identified and getting what they need. So,
We're in the minute track.
Right,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that kind of goal is a collective goal that our community partners with Career Source and Tempo and a few others, they look at the same goal. So we're trying to look at how everyone's looking at the same goal and using publicly available data. And in that particular ACS estimate, they do it by age. So we could easily take, that's kind of the broadband that the ACS reports it out at is 18 to 24.
Okay.
I will go in and look if they're reporting it for 16 and 17-year-olds as well. And we can put a sub goal to be tracking that. We do know that what is called out of school, not to be confused with after school, is defined as 16 to 24. And that is specifically the group that is being targeted by our partners at Career Source and just the U.S. Department of Labor and some of their workforce development monies that are out there, that they're out of school, but they're 16 to 24 and putting them into opportunities. So I think that's a really great point. And we will absolutely look at the data to see if we can have a sub goal for 16 and 17-year-olds to be able to track it as a step toward.
So, third grade's easy, and y'all understand when they says PM, what they're talking about, like the first one, PM1 happens in August when they go to enter third grade. Then PM2 is in right before the holidays, right in the mid-year to evaluate how far they've moved halfway through the school year. And then the final assessment in the spring is what's called PM3,
Is that what you use for school
and
grades?
that's what's used for school grades, right?
Why did we not decide to measure with student growth? Why did we decide on proficiency? Do y'all measure student growth still? Is that still part of school grade?
Yeah, learning gains are still part of school grades, like how far they've come from the previous, what you're saying is in second grade, how did they score in the last assessment of second grade versus how they scored in the last assessment of third grade? Right?
I mean, proficiency is,
Versus looking at proficiency, which is not necessarily measured how much they may have gained, but measures in totality, how many are on grade.
on grade level.
And so, but my question was, we can have that conversation, but we aren't just measuring kids who have gone through one of our programs. We're measuring all kids.
All kids.
Okay, I was confused. I thought we were trying to, you're tying back to,
Wait, no, we would be measuring our.
This in those schools?
That's,
So
How do you
the
do?
only way we're gonna know if our programs are impacting is if we measure the progress of the children who participate in our programs. Now, as a part of that, we would have measurements for the entire, for the entire,
Do you have the ability to pull that information out just with?
I don't.
whole population.
I don't.
That's the problem.
I mean, I guess y'all, so you're gonna go school by school and try to figure out which kids were in one of our programs?
No.
That's the problem.
No. So when when children participate in our programs, they have a sign-up process, the parents give permission for us to get their information. Right now, because we don't have we don't have a data sharing agreement with Leon County Schools, the parents agree to provide us that information. We're doing it right now with report cards, but as we move forward, it would be the progress monitoring that the parent gets on
You
behalf
pull
of
that
the.
information at that level?
I can't. All I know is that I can pull it by student. So if a student was signed up in one of our programs, then we're just gonna evaluate those students. So if a kid wasn't in one of our programs, but is in second grade at Sable, or third grade at Sable Palm, they would not be included in that measure. Is that what you're saying? Is that what we're saying?
They have to be in a program for this.
yes and yes and no.
Yes.
I think that we're conflating the purpose of the strategic plan of where you're making your investments to what we're measuring at the program level.
But that's important though.
It absolutely is, and that's why we bring in the independent evaluators to do that predictive analysis and comparative analysis. But we have to have a direction that we're going so we know what research questions to ask. But so this conversation absolutely leads to all of it. And we do have the ability to do that with the sharing agreement that we're working on to articulate. But there are some, because of FERPA, there are some concerns of doing it at the individual student level. And so how we're doing it with the Department of Children and Families is a model that we might be able to replicate with the school district.
It's easy to see the third grade numbers for all of our Title I schools. See, okay, in Title I schools, the average was 32%, and now it's 37%, right? But to drill down then to how many of those 3,000 third graders were involved in a program funded by the Children's Services Council, and to extrapolate them, and they're in that equation, then everybody else, I don't know how you would do that.
Well,
And then what is it? If they're in a summer program, they count. If they're in a year-round program,
Yeah, that's,
I mean,
there's
how
multiple
long?
programs.
yeah.
So
Which
they're-
ones tag back to the comparative measure?
So this is all a part of what we will help to detail. But we have to be able to show that children, families who touch our programs are making gains. And the way we do that is by getting information from them and sharing agreements. So I think so if I'll do it this way. So there are 100 kindergartens at school A, kindergartners or pre or whatever. 30 of them participate in our program. We're gonna follow those 30 kids. So we'll know where they start at the beginning of the program, and we'll know where they end at the end of the program. If we don't do that, there's no sense in doing the program. So yes, we will look in totality at the students, because you always want to say the school's rate is this. First graders, this. Of those first graders, this many participated in our program. And of the ones that participated in our program, they started here and now they're here.
That's very, so if we have a mom that before the child was born participated in a program and they were 1, and then we find out what they were in kindergarten, what if they just participated in a program when they were 4? I mean, I don't understand. I don't know how you would, that's a lot. I don't know how you would track that.
So,
I
But
think-
can I-
But you're not tracking each organization's success, you're tracking student success. We track different organizations' success by funding them and their data they bring back to us. Correct? Like,
But the question he's asking is, we have multiple programs. And so say a child is involved in one program, but not four others, and that one program may be a food program, not a educational or
Uh-huh.
development program.
Uh-huh.
Which children do
you're
you
saying.
count, and
I
at
see
what
what you're saying.
age do you count them? If they're in for 1 year
and
versus
then they
4
program.
years,
Yeah.
they still count? I mean,
Yeah.
we're going to have to come up with some.
So,
So when I said that I thought our idea was a brilliant one, the reason I say it's a brilliant one is because we as a council, the council is deciding what are really our priorities. And now when programs come forward asking for funding, I'm going to say, when we finalize what this is, does it meet this goal? Are they going to? I sent I won't say the whole amount, but I sent an email to Dina asking about a particular program. Because I looked at the program, I'm like, you funded this, I looked at your annual report, I'm like, what the heck is this, right? And I go on, I'm like, and as I'm looking through this, I thought, I don't see how that program is meeting any of these goals. We funded it, and maybe it does, that's why I'm not mentioning it by name. But from this point forward, once we as a council decide these are our priorities, my question to every program we fund is, hey, how are you helping us meet our priority of making sure that we've increased the kindergarten readiness by 5% in Title I schools? Tell me what it is in your program that is magic to help us accomplish that.
That is why this is so important.
Right, oh, yes.
Because when we get these goal statements, any procurements we do, any programming we do is going to be framed by accomplishing these. So prior to this, we've just looked at the theory of change, we've looked at what baselines have been for those impact areas, and we've created metrics that say, if this, then this, and we have done some good work. To move to outcomes, we have to have a concrete SMART goal to know where we're trying to get.
Yeah.
And then we are only doing procurements that feed into each of these goals. So you probably will see a lot fewer programs get funded. You will see a lot more stringency. You will see a lot more measurements. You will see a lot more proof from them that they're going to feed into these goals before we fund them. Because now we've got a real direction, a strategic direction that we're trying to accomplish in these three funding categories to feed into the accomplishment of those three priorities that we said as a council were important for us.
before I go to, let me ask one thing. I think correct me if I'm wrong, there's two separate
Conversations.
things, yeah. I
Yeah,
think.
there,
Like you're saying.
yeah.
And that's
So-
what I'm getting.
Okay, all right. We'll go ahead then.
Oh, okay. But I'm getting that point. I like Mr. Mitchell's comments, and I like the direction we're headed, where we're going to have very specific goals. And from this point forward, once we approve these goals, all of the programs, all the resources that we invest have to be targeted towards these. And if we have programs that come forward that don't fit that, then we don't.
We have to say
We
no.
just say no. That being said, I like these. I like them all. All six of them. Very good. I think they're right on point. I think the realization is, and we're not going to get this figured out tonight because there's a lot of detail, but this gets getting, I think, where you're going. How we measure these, how we're moving the dial on these, that is going to take some time and some detail. And we do have to get that figured out. And I think that's part of the next step of how do we come back and do
Yes.
this, because as Mr. Hannah says, I mean, who qualifies for us to measure? I mean, those are the things we have to honestly ask ourselves.
Agreed.
So that's the how do we measure? We're not going to solve that tonight, but we do need to get that resolved at some point in time. But I do like the idea that, and this is getting more granular, but it's granular to a point that is critical because we do have limited resources. At the end of the day, I mean, we've got X number of children, a lot of children. And I know people, they look at $9-10 million, $8-9-10 million, they think that's a lot of money. It really isn't. It's not a lot of money when you're talking about trying to move the needle like we're trying to move it. So we have to be very disciplined and very focused. I love this because this gives us an ability to be more disciplined, more focused, and really forces us to make decisions consistent with what our charter is, honestly. So anyway, but good, I think that's where you're headed.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not going to solve the how to measure tonight. And I don't think that's not the objective tonight, because otherwise we're going to sit here and spend the next 6 hours and we're still not going to get very far on it. So anyway.
Thank you.
No, and that's why I'm just simple-minded. I think whether they were in a program or not in a program, we take credit for kindergarten readiness scores going up 5% and those third grade scores going up 5% because we've invested in those programs. Because I don't know how you would ever extrapolate out which kids went through one of our programs for a day, a month, a week, a year, 4 years versus kids that didn't. I mean, I think anything we do in these areas is going to add to the benefit of the whole.
Yeah.
So kindergarten readiness in all of our Title I schools increases by 5%, not just ones that may have been in the program for God knows how long or whatever.
And keep,
And I just want to clarify, I was not saying that wasn't the case, but what I am saying is I want to be clear to everyone who's listening. We will know the children that participate if they are better off. We need to be able to know that. And so we will know that. Understanding that if they're better off, then as a whole, the school is better off, the rate goes up and all of that. So I was not intimating or trying to say that, no, we're not going to pay attention to any kids that aren't in our program. We will include those in the number, but we have to be able to know that whatever program they were in, that things are better off. And that's not something, so to your point, whether they were in the feeding program while they were in the womb versus being in a program at 4, we won't know that right away. But if we're around long enough, we might be able to figure out how to follow that kid. We just can't do it right now.
I just want to echo Superintendent Hand, when we were making these goals, I think that was where kind of all of our heads were at. Because I don't think we could have come up with this goal without that being kind of like our guidelines, because I am definitely not comfortable with proficiency if we're looking at individual kids. Definitely not comfortable.
Well, the problem you run into, and the reason we stuck with the kindergarten readiness score, because that's the one that's reported, right?
Yeah.
And if we say the kindergarten readiness in Leon County is 42%, but then the Children's Services Council is saying, well, the kids we funded are at 47% or 57% or whatever, they'll be like, what are you talking about?
Or they're gonna say, well, why isn't my kid in that program? Or I'm paying money for, that's my tax dollars. I'm just,
I just think the reason we did it is because those are they're such public numbers and easy to extract, they're easy to pull, right? And everyone sees them.
And they're meaningful measures.
Yeah, Leon County's kindergarten readiness rate, Leon County's third grade reading levels are all published for everyone to see. That last one, I don't know anything about the ACS community survey, how accurate it is, not accurate it is.
These are starting points. We may find something
So
as we go.
how we track
measurement.
that goal, I don't know how you track it, but the first two are easy as long as we don't try to figure out
Individual students.
individual kids, which one we claim and which one we don't. How they
I want to be
Oh.
clear. I'm not saying we're only claiming our
The
kids.
house.
What I'm
to
saying
be
is,
determined.
There's a 708.
To know.
I'm claiming him. That's 600. You wouldn't even our programs.
Sika, though, that you made the point, and I think it's a good point. The rising tide lifts all ships. We are really evaluating all ships and the rising tide. And you made that.
Yeah.
So.
So that is youth and success.
Liverpool.
And Daryl's not even here. I can't even blame Daryl. All right, so next we have family well-being. We do have some goals under this. So one goal is to reduce the rate of verified child abuse and neglect cases in families living in neighborhoods served by family resource centers by 10% by 2030, using fiscal year data 24-25 as the baseline. The other one is reduce the percentage of food insecure children in Leon County by 10% by 2030, using fiscal year 23-24 as the baseline. So before we dive into feedback on that, I also wanted to just bring up, not to go back to this, I think when Sika's talking about the children that we serve, that is a long-term vision of what might be possible. And you know what I mean? And so no, when you're looking at these two SMART goals, we actually have programs that and all these SMART goals, we actually currently have programs that we have been funding, right? That are already likely tied into these SMART goals. This is just, again, diving in deeper and showing how they can relate, you know? So, for example, the first goal about the family resource centers with the verified child abuse and neglect, well, what should the family resource centers primarily, hopefully, one of their charges be, right? Reducing, potential impacts for people even entering into that stage of becoming abuse or neglect. So, again, there's detailed information under each of these goals, how we would propose our partners would be likely. That would help influence that, and then the strategies, objectives and strategies as well. So I'll open that up for any questions. Comments?
Good goals.
That is cool, the family resource, I mean, that's the Family Resource Center, not our version of it, but our version is the national model says that by doing this, you will reduce. And so we just are in line with that.
So, again, no very lengthy committee discussion on these as well. But again, any other questions or comments?
How are, sorry, yeah,
Okay.
how are you guys, are you doing off of like by zip code? Okay, I was just wondering how you were breaking it down.
Yeah, we had that discussion as well. So that's what we decided to try to hone in on and focus on, to be able to capture something that's actually tangible. Zip code seemed to work. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, and Sika, I don't know if this is possible, but it seems to me because of the amount of money that we are spending on the family resource centers as a category, while certainly a reduction in abuse is fantastic. When I look at the percentage of our overall budget that is going to that area, I'm hopeful that there will be more that comes from family resource centers as well in the neighborhoods they serve. In other words, that there will be a reduction in hunger, that their test scores their school readiness, their kindergarten readiness will go up. We'll be able to evaluate the neighborhoods that they serve. Because again, when you look at the dollar amounts that we are committing to the family resource centers, it's a lot.
Well, the students they're serving are in our school, so they're gonna be a part of our capture.
Right.
Throw in there. But then to your point, we're still evaluating we would still be evaluating who we actually have out there.
Yeah.
The family resource centers. So they still would have a role as well, right? From their contract perspective of those deliverables that we have for them. So it's still, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, what's the thing? So do we have with our case management? Because now I got this, since this village just took it over, are we in partnership with them to say like, hey, we have these family resource centers and we know this child is in care. Like, how is that going? How are these families that are our kids, if they have a abuse, they're in also the dependency system, unless they're non-judicial, then, so I'm saying, how are they gonna?
So the goal of the Family Resource Center is to keep them from getting involved with DCF in the first place. So when families come in to either one of the centers, one of the first things that is done is determination as to whether they are involved in dependency. If they are involved in dependency, there is a warm handoff back to the case manager, because technically with those families, there are resources that are provided by the community-based care agency as well as the case management agency. And so what we will do is look at ensuring that they are staying connected with that. Families that are not involved with DCF in any way go through the resource center and get involved in all of those.
So then how can we say that we are reducing this verified child abuse if they're not even involved? If there is no you know what I'm saying? There's no allegations, they're not involved, then there is no abuse.
Well, we're keeping families in that neighborhood from going into the system. So if the FRC is working on it, you should see the number drop, because you're reducing the number that goes into the system in the first place.
I think you answered that really well, Sika, and I just want to add to that. So for example, we have this family resource center here. So we had this discussion, we could absolutely drill down to what types are the high number of types of maltreatments being verified in this area. And you'll notice, to your point, it's going to say rolling 3-year average, because it had to, it's all depending on data. People might move, might not answer them right. But they could, if they were going to drill down, let's say that domestic violence, right, is the number one verified maltreatment. It is in Leon County. But let's say it's in this particular area, that family resource center, this staff should be able then to target, right, and maybe develop, design programming or whatever to possibly impact that. So maybe they could get ahead of that and maybe even reduce families that are even getting to that phase of domestic violence. So they would still have to do homework. They would have to do their homework. What is occurring in this area? What is the actual need?
Okay, so we're being proactive instead of reactive.
That's how it should.
And I guess my thing is how are we? I guess it just go, and that's just something we're gonna have to figure out, is like, how are we saying that it's this family resource center that is causing the decrease in DCF involvement when the clients that we serve are not gonna be DCF involvement already, like, because they have their own resources. So,
yeah,
and it's not the DCF involvement's resources that are causing them to go, because let's say this mom said, you know what, I'm tired of this, I'm gonna use refuge house, or you know what I'm saying? Like, but I guess that doesn't really matter. We'll figure it out. Yeah.
It's a good point. And so to that, they still have the responsibility to, everybody's saying that process map would exist in here. So I'm just going to go back to the family violence, to the domestic violence. If domestic violence is the item for this area, right? They have the homework to do. What are the domestic violence services? So they're still going to be tapping into the CDC. They're still going to be tapping into this village, still refuge house. Because if there's gaps there for whatever reason, right, when it comes down to domestic violence, that they cap out, or they realize that people participating in certain programs is whatever, not as effective, maybe something else, there may be opportunities for them to create and fulfill perhaps that gap to meet. I'm like paraphrasing, but they would still have that homework, which would involve them having conversations with this village, with Northwest Florida Health Network, X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
But you want to add something to it?
Well, and then the other thing is we want to make sure we're not duplicating or supplanting. And so with that, if they are already DCF involved, and I know you're very familiar with DCF, as am I, there are and we're a part of, so let me stop. I got all these thoughts going, I'm trying to talk. We are a part of the integration meetings for Circuit 2. So we know all of the different providers that are servicing families with dependency. That's why we want to send those families that come into the FRC back there to ensure that they are connecting with those services. We want to try to keep families who aren't in dependency away from it by offering those services. So to the vice chair's point, if the CBC, if the managing entity for the FRC does their research and knows that domestic violence is the number one reason that families are going into dependency in this neighborhood, we want to keep families out of that. So we are going to host, we're going to do whatever, we're going to identify, we're going to do street committee, we're going to do whatever we need to do to keep more families from going in, because once they're in, then those are counted as DCF and the CBC, and they're responsible for bringing those numbers down. We want to be responsible for keeping them from going in there. So we don't want to get it, we don't want there to be confusion that, well, why is the FRC doing the same thing that the CBC is doing? We're not. We're trying to keep them out. CBC is handling them once they get in.
Any other questions? All right, so the last one is capacity building. We have one goal under that. And again, you guys will have a chance to digest this whole report, send any feedback, commentary back to Sika and team, in time before you actually vote on this, come March or April. So goal 6 is establish baseline organizational capacity metrics by 2026 and support at least 50% of partners in achieving measurable improvement by 2028. So Sika, I'm gonna allow you to talk about that.
Bottom line is, if we don't have good providers, we're not going to have good outcomes. And what we've discovered over the almost 5 years that we've been doing this work is that we have almost 2,000 nonprofits that are dealing with children and families in Leon County, whether it's one or a gazillion. But there are deficiencies in the way that they do. And this is, listen, whoever's listening, I promise I'm not being critical. I'm just telling you what we see. There are deficiencies in how they operate. There are deficiencies in how they keep records. And a lot of it is because they are born out of the heart, not necessarily the business. So started with the heart and just give us the money, we just get it done. We know people are better. No, we have to be able to measure that. We have to know that you know what an operating budget is. We have to know that you understand what line item budgeting is, because our goal is not only for you to do better as far as your outcomes and seeking our funding, but eventually you are able to seek funding from other areas. We know that our funding is going to be impacted. We can't just keep funding things over and over. We have to be able to diversify. And so when we did our strategic planning with Alice Lee Stansbury, she gave us lots of compliments, but the number one compliment she gave us was the investment in the capacity building, because it's the work that she does every day and she sees where those deficiencies are. So as an example, the CSC in Miami created their own entity within their organization to help organizations provide services better. We don't have to do that here because we have UPHS, and that is part of their goal, not only advocating, but making the human services and profits in Leon County better. So we are looking to them to be our partner in this area. And we've actually already kind of started on this certification piece such that they go through those modules, they become a certified provider, and that cuts down on the work and the money that we have to put into making sure they're doing everything they're supposed to do. So we felt very strongly that we should at least have one goal that helps us show where our partners are when we started and where they are as we get into 2020.
Councilmember Bryant?
I appreciate the intent of this goal. I think it's a smart one. The only question I have is, how do you come up with 50%? Because that seems, as you with passion explain why this goal is important, 50% seems to be a pretty generous.
It's long.
And I mean generous as in, no, I mean, I'm thinking the opposite.
Go a little higher.
I'm thinking if we're really trying to hold people's feet to the fire to be responsible stewards of our resources, 50% doesn't seem like but maybe it is. I'm not qualified to really tell you because y'all work with them.
And
But
you know,
we-
we're
but we
we're
do
a
have
small
money.
but mighty team,
So-
and UPHS is a small but mighty team, and so. I think we wanted to ensure that it was something we could see ourselves achieving. And if we're getting there sooner than later, then maybe we come back and revisit the goal and increase it. But if, again, you all look at this, have conversations with us, and we can augment any of this in a way that makes sense.
Councilmember Richards.
Come back to me. I'm reading through these before I.
Can you just explain what this is one more time for me, just like dumb it down a
Sure.
little bit?
Sure. So.
Human to child, yeah.
I need layman's terms, you know?
Right, Ally?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Didn't graduate from Leon.
I'll give an example.
Super
First
neat.
funding cycle, we had an organization that applied, Jersey, I'm gonna call them out. Second funding cycle that applied. The application was terrible. It was not good at all. The presentation wasn't good. This is not anything that Mr. Leroy does not know. Through our technical assistance, through work with UPHS, through attending all of the opportunities we have provided so that they can learn better how to do their job. Jersey, Diamonds in the Rough,
Sports education.
sports education, and they went from the bottom all the way to the top when they did their last application. The same thing with Reach One. And so what we know is if we help them learn how to do what it is they are wanting to accomplish better, they do better, we get better outcomes, the participants end up better, and we now have a better cadre of providers who can apply for the funding to help us reach these goals.
Okay, so what, I don't know who, did I just cut you off? No, okay, so what you're saying is we are helping people run their business. We're helping people get to a place where they're running their business to be able to work in our,
So it's a,
But I don't know if, I'm sorry, I don't know that running their business is the right term. What we are doing is we're helping them to build capacity to be able to achieve the outcomes that will help us accomplish this goal, accomplish these goals.
I'm gonna share something with you. So it is a, I don't wanna use the word controversy, but it's a debatable topic, in my opinion, with the council, for building capacity. And so
this,
how, yeah,
okay,
in general, we have done this before.
okay,
And so I see where you're going, and I'm gonna tell you my point of view on it. Is there are organizations out there who are doing the work, who are actually making an impact, grassroots approach, right? They have a heart to make an impact, and they're doing those things and could do a lot more if they had some resources, right? You know, it might be a whatever, just using person
Or
example
some tutoring.
or some tutoring.
Have-
And so again, applying for, I think we have a very tough process, right? And so even to get your foot in the door, I mean, you have to have some level of expertise, right? You know, to be able to apply X, Y, and Z. So we offered ROI. Some of these groups that are doing the work could help us achieve some of our goals a lot quicker if they had more resources. So we can't just give it away, but we can give you the opportunity to, it's strenuous, go through the steps to, hey, how do you fill out? I mean, I know that sounds terrible, maybe,
yeah. I
but
mean,
that's how I came to the conclusion and can like support capacity building.
Okay.
And they gave some examples, I think, one time showing us some folks who maybe had to go through it. I know it sounds terrible, but again, you're a one-man shop, you have time to, you know, you're doing work, but I have seen it work, but
yeah,
okay.
okay.
So think of,
Yeah.
read it over, and see,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I'm just trying to, because, I mean, one, running a business is hard. Okay, it takes a lot of work, and if you're a one-man person, are we like then saying, okay, we'll do everything for you while you're out making your money to support your life?
No,
You know,
not
that's
at all.
not my,
That's not what it is.
Not
okay,
even.
so I'm not. Is it like are we mentoring this for like this?
So we aren't doing the mentoring. So this is where United Partners for Human Service comes in, because that organization was founded to give the human services nonprofits in Leon
Mhm.
County the ability to collaborate, learn best practices, and move from hard work into the business of nonprofits. So what we realize is we don't, our team doesn't need to be doing that. We have an entity that can work with them to do that. But the entity is also small.
Yeah.
And they need support to do that. And so it becomes this win-win collaboration in that they're working with the entities on our behalf. We are doing our due diligence when we do procurements by giving the budgeting sessions and the training so that they understand what we require. And then we get a better applicant, which means that we should get better outcomes. And over the almost 5 years that we've been doing this, that is exactly what we have seen.
Oh, yeah, no, and their stuff is.
Yes, but no, we're not going in and doing your
So
book.
we're saying, okay, the human services is putting this on and here you can attend this, and human services, are they getting a percentage of anything? Are we paying them to do these for
Well,
people?
now we're not paying them to do
Okay.
anything.
I didn't know.
We probably will look at some sort of agreement as we move into the certificate piece. Because what that will do is it keeps us from having to verify whether they have their listing with the Department of State, whether they know how to do it. So they are learning those basics and getting the certificate that says, we got everything, you're already the threshold that you're going to ask for.
Okay.
Many of them want to do better too, like they want to be able to show that their participants started at A and now they're at C. They just don't know how to do that.
Mhm.
So that's also where the evaluation piece comes in, which we're going to talk about in the next item, so that we're evaluating the programs. They know how they're being evaluated. And quite frankly, sometimes you have to say, I know you have a heart for this work, but your model isn't working.
Mhm.
And so maybe you need to team up with another group. And I was very honest about that from the very beginning. Yeah, so that's why we thought just one goal.
Yeah.
That will get us.
Councilmember Mitchell.
I have been against this from the very beginning, not because I don't believe in the organizations that, to seek this point, have their heart in the right place. But because I think to begin with, as an organization, we have 10 years to show the people of Leon County that their whatever millage rate we're at is going towards the first 5 goals that we're talking about here. And we did spend money. We spent $235,000 for capacity building. I don't think if in year 15, after utilizing all of the big boys, because that was what the argument became, was it's these little mom and pop shops against the big guys, and all the big guys are getting money. Look, I have no dog in any of them. I don't know the big guys, I don't know the little guys. There is no doubt that the little guys add value. And to Mr. Watts's point, there are organizations out there who we don't need to help from a capacity building standpoint. They understand what it means to file corporate papers with the Department of State. They understand how to run a budget. They understand how to submit a proposal. And there are enough of them out there who could meet our needs. So I have always been against a capacity building component. Having said that, I'm also someone who believes that I'm part of a council of 10 people, and one voice should not like tear something down, but find a way to O'Brien is saying, it's suggesting that 50%. I like.
It's bang for the buck. I'm getting that bang for the buck.
Wow, that is way low. I'm like, my heavens, we have put money in, and to suggest that our small but mighty staff is not working with them. I'm looking at a member of the staff that works directly with applicants to make their application better. And we have meetings here, those workshops of how to help them. So we are putting resources into it. And if you're going to put resources into it and are only getting 50% out of it that have made measurable improvements, I don't think that that is, that's not even a C. That's a failing. I'm like, I would hope that 80% of the people that are organizations that have gone through, what was the other organization that Kim Grippo was part of?
Annie.
Yeah, I always mess that up. That between the UPHS and Annie, that and the crew of Dina and Holly and whoever else has touched these entities, that we're at 80% of those partners achieving measurable improvement by 2028. Anyhow, that's the only point I'll make.
All right, thank you for that feedback. Any other comments? Those are your strategic ad hoc committee recommendations, SMART goals. You can absolutely, again, review those documents, have an opportunity to submit any questions, recommendations to the staff, and the goal would be to March, April, actually, you guys would be voting and making a decision, and
If we can get good feedback between now and the March 5th meeting, it would not take us long to approve the draft goals so that we can. So
do we need to make them to amend that 50% number? Do you want to address that now? Or
we'll bring it back. We'll bring it back. Let's not do any
all right.
motions on this today. Please email us after you look at it again. If you've got any questions, we already know we're gonna make that augmentation to that particular goal.
Okay, well, we will move on to the next part of our agenda. This is going to be programming update. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Director Green around the RFP.
Right, so on page 29, you will see the executive summary for RFP 2026-02 and for evaluation services. Before I turn it over to Ms. McPhail, who'll just go through the executive summary with you. What we did in the OST out of school time year-round RFP that you all approved and we issued, and the deadline was this past Friday, is there would be 10% of the awarded amount that would be held back for evaluation services. So this is evaluation that is going to walk alongside the awarded programs. This executive summary explains how that will happen. And so at this point, I'll turn it over to Ms. McPhail to give you the quick overview of this summary document. We'll not vote on this today. It will come back before you in March, and you can vote one way or the other in March. Ms. McPhail.
Thanks, Dr. Green. I love the conversation that just took place about the strategic plan and how can we be sure at the individual level we're making an impact. All of our procurements are designed using what's known as results-based accountability. It asks 3 questions primarily. How much did you serve? Like, who did you serve? How much did you serve? What do those units look like? And that question that we keep asking, is anybody better off because of these services? We know that it's incredibly difficult to do community-based movement. That's why we use this RVA framework in how we design our programs and the benchmarks and the metrics that we're collecting. In the RFP, the programs are required, the one that's open right now, they are required to collect very specific data points and input that data into our system. And that's gonna help us be able to tell that individually, were they better off? Are their grades better? Were they, what do their absenteeism rates look like? Do they get involved with juvenile justice? Various different things like that. What we really care about, though, is those questions that you guys were all grappling with here today in looking at our strategic plan. We intentionally wanted to wait with our OST development until we had a year-round program in place So we had all of our monitoring processes built, and the implementation science, if you will, kind of down. And now we want to bring an external evaluator to come alongside these programs as well as alongside of our monitoring work to do comparative analysis and predictive indexing. By building the idea of these groups are participating, these individuals are participating in our OST funded program and establishing not a control group, but a comparison group of like individuals that have the same access to all the other resources, but for this particular program that they're looking into. So this executive summary goes over the reason why we want to have that independent evaluation, which was always part of the plan since the inception of the council and the investments that we were making. Why the independent evaluator, the model that we want them to use in terms of a hybrid model. We don't want them to rely solely on the data that we're collecting, but also some of the data indicators that are out there. That agreement that we're forming with the school district is going to be paramount. The connection that we have to the Department of Juvenile Justice as well is going to feed into a lot of that work that we're planning on doing. The contract structure would be a 2-year structure to kind of see some of the implementation science, but then to also be able to track and do all of the necessary reporting for the individuals that we engage with. The budget approach, Director Green just went over, and then it's just kind of that overview of how the procurement would work. The plan, and you kind of see it out there, it's pretty rigorous because we want them to be in place by the time that our year-round programming starts in August. The summer programs that are operating will not be part of this this kind of first round, but that will get picked up in the second half of this particular engagement. In addition, kind of just in with our practice is that we would continue to hold our standards for our procurement processes that we have developed. In no small part, thanks to the expertise of our legal firm, Bryant Miller Olive and Mr. Fred Stringer, who's not with us today, but is, I would say, not just a local expert, but a state and national expert in procurement design. So maintaining all of that rigor and standard, including having an evaluation panel with subject matter expertise related to research and evaluation methodologies. That is the objective of releasing it. The timeline is ambitious with it, and I'll just use this to say that our goal as we move forward with any investments, now that we've gone through some of that implementation, is that as we start looking even at our family strengthening investments, what does that evaluation component look like? Our plan eventually that you'll see with even with the family resource centers, that's going to become a part of that sustainability plan after we get past this initial level setting and capacity building and of the implementation of what we're doing. Now we can bring them in that partner to really show that comparative analysis. And the final piece that I heard today that will be part of the research questions in the final scope of work for this RFP is around predictive indexing. That question of return on investment. Some of the work that we've done already with our family strengthening programs is how you calculate and how do you estimate return on investment. So that will be built into that final research question and scope of work for whatever partner we end up with. The last thing I'll say is how this came about in terms of the scope that we're building was done in partnership with several of the research institutions here in this community that we've talked to, that we've consulted with in our market research phase of how to design these correctly, not relying solely on what we know or what other CSCs have done, but the fact that we have three really great institutions right here in our community to help influence and direct how this could be done. That I would open up.
Well, now we have started this with our engagement with Dr. Deary Van Landing. He walked alongside our mentoring programs and presented. We started, dipped our foot in there, but this one we want to be very robust and very hands-on I do want to emphasize that this is not technical assistance. This is not suggestion. This is evaluating. It's already going on, so.
Thank you for that presentation. And, oh, yeah. Do you think that I'm not entirely opposed to the idea? I think it is it's interesting. But do you think that you're at a space like we have all of our things together where this is needed, right? At this.
Yes.
Yes.
Drastically,
So-
absolutely.
I'm just reading the room, I could be off. I think you're gonna have to consider proposal or something presenting the bang for the buck of why this is needed now, but that's just my short level opinion. Like right now, just describing this, I don't know what you would get as far as vocabulary, Mr. Mitchell.
An important point, Holly, you said this was always considered. No, it was not. Maybe you thought it was always being considered. Never once did I hear in the last 5 years that we were going to be doing something. Because by the way, that's not a comment on whether I think it's worthwhile. But never once did we say we are going to start putting aside 10% for evaluation services. Ever. I don't think that now is the time. I don't think that with as limited of resources we have, I would much rather find programs that met our first 5 goals and fund those than take 10%. And again, I'm sure it would be quality research. I'm sure there would be quality evaluations, but if our goals are to raise this by 5%, like raise this by 10%, we can evaluate whether or not we're meeting the goals. And when you start putting aside 10% in a very limited budget, where there are so many needs in this community, it's just not something that I don't put it as one of my priorities. Especially in a community that desperately needs resources. And I'm not saying that the research institutes that are out there don't need resources, but that's not what the Children's Services Council was established for.
Councilmember O'Brien.
I would have to say I agree with all of that because quite frankly, I don't think we're far enough along to really dig into the data because we've created enough data to really show things. But I will say this much. There is a lot of research interest in this area. There are a lot of organizations that are already funded that do this kind of research rather than us dedicating 10% of our dollars to fund this. If we are interested at this point in time in engaging in research, a research effort, I would suggest that we look for existing funded research partners in this space to come in and provide this level of support. And I think that's if there is an interest in this, I think that's what we look at doing. See if we can find a partner that's funded that would be willing to come in. Organizations want data. They use data basically to justify their existence. If we have programs and plans that can produce data, we might find that there are research organizations that would be willing to come in and provide that level of support without us having to spend 10% of our revenue dollars on that. I think we need to focus our revenues on those things that actually produce results and then measure our performance against those baselines that we are establishing on the goals we've set prior.
I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah, do we ever, I know we listened to them come in a report of how great everything was and how wonderful they are and blah, 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 blah. But do we have like a quality control person that actually goes and makes site visits and digs deeper into programs that we fund and watch the day-to-day operations of how the
We have.
sausage is made or how the kids are?
We have 3 performance partners and they do the monitoring and work with the organizations. We don't have anybody that does the evaluation piece like the truth. So it's not really research. It's the evaluation piece, helping to evaluate the programs. We do program monitoring though.
So we actually go to programs
We
and
do site visits. Yeah. Now we aren't in programs every day. We don't have that kind of.
right. No, I'm not saying that every day, but
No, and we have a metric set up, we have modules set up, the whole thing, so we have 3.5, because if Dina needs to go, she does as well, that goes to all of our programs on a schedule for their monitoring, and they are also responsible for the fiscal monitoring, which I won't even get into. Those. But if what we're hearing is you all aren't ready for evaluation services, then we won't present that. We felt we were for the out of school time, but if you're
I
not
was gonna
ready for
ask,
that.
I was gonna ask you, because you guys to finish said, yes, you're ready. Are you not particularly, like, you say, yes, we're ready?
So we will have funded out of school time. This council decided that you wanted to look at year-round programs so that we could follow children for the year. So that it would start in the summer. Some would just have the summer. I believe it was Councilmember Mitchell, Treasurer Mitchell, that wanted to ensure that we had just summer programming for those families. But then we also had programs that went year-round because we know that that was a need. So with the RFP that just closed, we're going into the second year of the summer and the year-round funding. So we felt that it was prudent going into the second year to have an evaluation that walks alongside that. We always do the monitoring. The evaluation doesn't take the place of the monitoring by performance partners and the fiscal monitoring. So we always do that.
So the evaluation, they were here, they got the summer, that will produce what?
It produces an independent organization that comes in and says if the programs are accomplishing the outcomes that we want toward these goals. If what you all are saying and what I'm hearing is our reports to you are adequate, and then we will keep giving you those reports. This program achieved these metrics, and if they achieve these metrics, then that means things should be better. We do not have the expertise to measure whether things should be better. We don't have that expertise. We have the monitoring expertise. And
We're developing baselines around the goals we're setting. And our performance against those baselines should give us some indication with.
Yeah, I mean, we will continue doing the
Making progress.
thing that we're doing. I do hope at some point, though, the council will want to, and we will do as you suggested, Mark, we will go out and see if there are entities that are willing to do that part for us. Gratis, basically. What I will say is that's the little bit of evaluation that we did get done. I'm sorry, all that. That surrounded our family strengthening program. We did pay for that. For them, for family and to do that service. But listen, we hear you loud and clear, and we will, move forward with what we've been doing.
What is the SAMIS report? What is that supposed to provide us?
SANUS is our Services and Activities Management Information System. We collect participant level demographics, service units, and the actual pre and post test, if you will. In the OST space, they're collecting information about school grades, about absenteeism as it's reported, and we know that that's problematic. I know we're having a whole other conversation about absenteeism, as well as their behavior supports. We then take that information and we're able to show, and you've seen it on some of our reports before, that 85% or more showed gains in this domain based on a pre-post test. Now, that is a pre-post test of a validated or an evidence-informed tool right? But it's not then doing the comparative analyses to third-party tools or looking at a comparison, say, for example, to third grade reading. If we took all of our third graders and then we were to dive in with our data and to see if it's relative, the changes that we're seeing in the program with the tools that we're using are then being validated against other tools. That's what the evaluation part could do. SAMUS doesn't do that. SAMUS does have the ability, I know that Councilmember Richards has asked for this, we can show the saturation, we can map where the recipients are. And so we're now trying to build a module to show where our service providers are as well. So we can do a little bit of that heat mapping for service saturation. It has the ability to do that. And then we're working on a module at the statewide level on the monitoring process, that fiscal process. So that's the other side of SAMUS that it does in terms of all of our fiscal monitoring. So they are able to put their budgets into the system and upload all of their receipts so that at any given time, we're able to track for this cost center, this is how much is being spent across programs within a program. In addition, what you're paying for with SAMUS is our application portal, our CRM, our customer relationship management tool, our contracting process as well. So we put our contracts in there, they get signed through there. So it does a little bit of everything. But in terms of it being an evaluation tool, one of the things that we're working on with guidance from Miami, the Miami Children's Trust, since we're part of a collaborative, is turning some of the reporting tools into dashboards. So that's why when we were having our meeting, I believe it was in December, we were able to pull up a quick dashboard that showed who's being served from what zip codes by an initiative, by a program, and mapping things from that perspective. We'll be able to at any point say, this is how many people are currently receiving services. This is how many people have received services. And that is anybody better off? But that's based on the data we put into it. There's no comparative. There's no predictive analysis that's happening at all. And the other thing that it does not do is the implementation science of the investments. And so that's what Dan Landingham's group was helping us with when we were investing in grassroots as well as evidence-based to make sure that the fidelity for implementation is happening so that we can feel confident that we'll get the results that we should expect. It does not monitor that. We do that pen and paper.
Okay, really quick, sorry. The programs though should be like in this information, should they not? I mean, shouldn't that be a requirement?
They collect the data and put it in SAMUS. That's
Okay.
correct.
And so then,
And we have 3 FTE that go alongside that. Again, if you had a Christmas list, I guess I'd add it to it.
I think that's what, I mean, at what point do we say, okay, you're a program, you should be, if you're getting thousands of dollars, you should be established. Give us our monthly reports, whether it's monthly, and we collect that and then compare, as we go on whatever it is. I just think that's for us to say, okay, let's get now an outsider person to come in to then compare. I think that's a waste of money when we should be collecting, they should be collecting it and giving it to us. And then we can say, okay, this is a trend that's been happening or not happening. And
But research is a good thing.
It is.
It's not, but when you have limited resources, it falls way down the priority. I'd rather put the money into the kids. I just think there might be organizations who like the data, like the research, because they want to produce reports. They want to produce studies. They want to publish. We have a lot of information. And you might have organizations that are willing to invest their own time and energy to get access to that data that then would allow them to provide, additional information for their research studies. I just don't think we should be investing our dollars in this.
Thank
We
you.
heard you loud and clear.
it might be even something to pair up with like a college at Florida State. I don't know, business, tech, I don't know, something where they can Yeah.
Councilmember Dunn.
Yeah, I would just say I'm kind of echoing what I've heard from other council members. I'm not prepared to vote on this right now, but I would encourage staff.
Yeah, it wasn't.
I would encourage staff to rethink what the value proposition is to the council and to the taxpayers. And if you can articulate that, bring it back, you've got an executive committee that looks at agenda items on February the 25th, and that would give it a preliminary thumbs up or thumbs down before we take it up again as council. Because I think there's elements that I'm hearing where I'm going, yeah, I like, but I'm not prepared right now to do anything with this in fairness.
This was not her vote today. This was
Okay.
information for you to have, and I think we've heard you. And I think we will rethink and regroup.
Appreciate that. And just one last follow-up. So you did reach out to Miami. They have this or another CSC in this. Okay.
Yeah,
Do you have-
Almost all see it
Yeah, so can you just maybe, do you have the opportunity to get an example report of what is produced? Maybe share that, again. Okay, any
The
other?
feedback from a value proposition makes absolute sense. So thanks. So, and that was really great feedback. So thank you for.
Any other comments? Yeah, that's your job. Right, so next. Okay, so next, we have upcoming meetings, page 33. So if you will, we have these, well, you can see it yourself, executive committee meeting Wednesday, February 25th, finance and budget committee, also on the 25th, 1 p.m. There is a finance and budget workshop. I believe Councilmember Mitchell is hosting that February 25th at 1:30. And then your governing council meeting, March 5th. Any questions or comments on the upcoming meetings?
Very quickly, will all council members go back and make sure these meetings are on your calendars, please? Because we try to make sure we're sending them out. They should come from council@cscleon.org, council@cscleon.org. And if you would do me a favor when you get them, say clear. That would be great.
But by accepting them, does that send a yay?
Yes.
Like you see when I write, okay.
Yes.
All right.
You accept them, they should go on your calendar and it tells us that you saw it and that.
You're hosting here for that finance
Yeah,
meeting?
so
or you're
that's-
hosting at your office?
He's running, he's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But-
I'm good.
First finance and then the workshop.
Got it.
And hopefully, Sika is meeting with me and kind of John Grayson, kind of everybody, so that we will have a solid agenda. And we'll get that out to all of the members of the council, so that if you're going to attend the workshop, you know what we're talking about, and if you can't, you'll know what we did on.
Yeah, may I ask, if for 2 minutes, what is the purpose of the workshop?
The work, okay, so our finance committees have been canceled because we've sort of got. The dates haven't really lined up nicely. So the first thing is to go back through all the financials for the last really 4 months and go through those. That'll be the first part of the meeting. Second part of the meeting that's the finance committee meeting. The second part is the workshop of looking at our budget, so that when we're making decisions on what programs to fund, what programs not to fund, we have a better understanding of what the financial condition of the CSC would be for 1 year or 2 years out, or 3 years out, depending on how long we've committed to certain programs. So it is a big picture look of the financial condition of the CSC, and sort of dovetailing Mr. Watts with what your committee did. Here's our priorities. Where's the funding gonna come from to meet those priorities?
It'll be virtual. Virtual, yeah, we'll come in person, so that is a little bit good. All right, with that, we will have member comments. Do we have any member comments?
I have one member comment, and that is on January 29th at Goodwood Museum, which is right behind TMH. There is an event called Color Me Blue put on. It is the annual fundraiser for the Early Learning Coalition of the Big Bend. Raises money for school readiness, things that were NVPK programs. It is I think 5:30 to 7:30. Tickets are $50. We have great sponsors, many of whom are sitting around this table, to which I say thank you to you all. But a very worthwhile event. It also has a silent auction that's got some really good items. There's a family of four. There's two hotel room for nights and 8 tickets to any of the parks at Walt Disney World. You've got lots of kids art, but then you've got Tallahassee Nurseries putting stuff in. Chuck's Fish has put stuff in. It's good silent auction. So I encourage you all to come. Again, January 29th. It's a Thursday from 5:30 to 7:30.
Can we ask? Seeker to send that information out to all of us?
Yeah.
I would appreciate that.
Thank you.
It's a very well done, man. Great.
Yeah. Open bar, beer and wine, and a blue Hawaiian, because everything is in the theme of blue.
Color blue Hawaiian.
I miss the blue one.
Yes. And the bartenders are related to me. There's a light.
So good.
Any other member comments?
Happy 2026.
With that, we will call this meeting adjourned at 6:13.
Gotta go.